At 71, Ron Howard reveals the 6 most evil actors of Hollywood's golden age. What if Hollywood's nicest man finally told the truth? For decades, Ron Howard has been the symbol of calm, kindness, and integrity in an industry fueled by ego and chaos. But behind that gentle smile is a lifetime of silent battles, clashes with legendary actors whose fame couldn't hide their tempers, control, or cruelty. At 71, Howard isn't chasing approval anymore. He's naming the icons who pushed him to his limits, and the hidden cost of staying kind in a ruthless world. This isn't gossip. It's the truth Hollywood never wanted you to hear. Andy Griffith, When Innocence Learns the Cost of Silence. Ron Howard's story doesn't begin with power, conflict, or disappointment. It begins with a child. A small red-haired boy standing on a quiet set in black and white America, believing, like millions of viewers, that goodness was something solid, something permanent. When 6-year-old Ron stepped onto the set of The Andy Griffith Show, he didn't see a star. He saw safety. Andy Griffith was America's father figure, the embodiment of patience and moral clarity. And to Ron, he felt exactly like that. Andy spoke to him gently. He listened. He made space for the child, not as a prop, but as a partner. In those early years, the warmth audiences felt was real. The laughter was real. The bond felt unbreakable. But television magic is fragile. As seasons passed and pressure mounted, something subtle began to change. The show became a national monument, and monuments demand perfection. The weight of expectation crept in quietly, then settled heavily. Andy Griffith grew more guarded, more irritable. His patience, once effortless, became conditional. Crew members felt it. Co-stars sensed it. Don Knotts admired him deeply but feared his unpredictable temper. Francis Bavier resented him openly. And Ron Howard, still just a boy, learned to read tension before he learned adulthood. No one yelled at him. No one exploded. That was the cruelty of it. The shift was silent. Ron learned when to stay quiet, when to disappear into the background, when not to ask questions. Lessons no child should need, but lessons that would shape him forever. By the time Ron became a teenager, curiosity replaced innocence. He wanted to understand storytelling, character motivation, the why behind the script. But curiosity was no longer welcomed. Questions felt like threats. Mentorship turned into distance. Authority became guarded territory. There was no dramatic fallout. No scandal. Just space. Cold, polite, permanent space. When the show ended, so did the closeness. They didn't fight. They drifted. And when Andy Griffith passed away decades later, Ron's tribute was respectful, but restrained. He honored the man, not the relationship he once believed in. Yet this story isn't about resentment. It's about transformation. Andy Griffith didn't break Ron Howard. He forged him. From that quiet discomfort came a conviction that would define Howard's entire career. Kindness should never be performative. It must be real. A set should feel safe. Authority should never silence curiosity. No actor, especially a child, should feel small because someone else feels pressure. Andy Griffith was not the worst man Ron Howard ever worked with. He was the first. The first reminder that public warmth can hide private strain. The first lesson that goodness, when compromised, leaves marks. And those marks became the foundation of the director Ron Howard would become. Calm not because life was easy, but because he knew exactly what silence can cost. Tom Sizemore, When Compassion Meets Chaos. By the time Ron Howard met Tom Sizemore, he believed he understood difficulty. He had grown up inside it. He had learned how to stay calm when others didn't. How to lead without raising his voice. How to protect a set by absorbing tension instead of reflecting it. And for years, that philosophy worked. Until chaos walked in wearing talent. The film was Ransom, a high-stakes thriller built on control, precision, and timing, everything Ron Howard valued. On paper, it was a stable machine. Mel Gibson anchored it with discipline. Rene Russo brought emotional clarity. The studio trusted Howard completely. But Tom Sizemore was never built for paper. He was raw, volatile, electric. When he was present, the screen bent around him. His intensity felt dangerous in the best way, until it wasn't. Sizemore didn't arrive like a villain. He arrived like a warning no one wanted to read. Late call times. Shifting moods. Eyes that sometimes looked focused, sometimes lost. Scenes that should have snapped into place instead unraveled. Not because he lacked ability, but because his energy was unpredictable, and unpredictability is poison to rhythm. Every adjustment rippled outward. Retakes multiplied. Schedules bent. The crew felt it before they understood it. Ron Howard never shouted. He never humiliated. He did what he always did. He compensated. He reorganized days. Shifted scenes. Shielded cast and crew from the instability of one man. Compassion became a management style. And for a while it worked. Barely. But compassion is not infinite. It drains quietly until suddenly it's gone. The breaking point didn't come with a scream or a scandal. It came during a key sequence that demanded emotional precision and physical control. Sizemore's behavior that day crossed a line no amount of patience could soften. Safety was at risk. Momentum was collapsing. And for the first time, Ron Howard stopped the machine. He shut the scene down. Calmly, softly, firmly. No anger in his voice, only finality. For the crew watching, it was unsettling. The industry's nicest director had reached a boundary. Not because he was offended, because he was responsible. Responsibility, Howard understood, meant protecting the many, even if it meant confronting the one. After the film wrapped, Ron Howard said nothing. No interviews. No exposés. No cautionary tales. He carried the experience the way he carried everything else, quietly. When Tom Sizemore passed away years later, Howard offered no public tribute. And that silence said more than condemnation ever could. What Sizemore taught him was brutal in its clarity. Kindness without boundaries becomes surrender. Talent cannot excuse harm. And leadership sometimes means choosing stability over sympathy. Ron Howard didn't walk away from Ransom bitter. He walked away sharper, more grounded, less willing to absorb chaos at the expense of everyone else. Andy Griffith taught him the cost of silence. Tom Sizemore taught him the cost of tolerating instability for too long. And between those two lessons, a new truth formed. Compassion must be paired with control, or it becomes a liability. And just when Howard believed he had learned how to manage volatility, he faced a different kind of threat. Not chaos. Not instability. But something far more rigid. Far more exhausting. Shelley Long, When Control Strangles Discovery. By the time Ron Howard stepped onto the set of Night Shift, he was no longer the child learning survival. He was a young director standing at the edge of legitimacy. This film wasn't just another project. It was his test. His first real step into Hollywood's big leagues. Every decision mattered. Every day felt like a verdict on whether he truly belonged behind the camera. The set itself was a collision of energies. Henry Winkler brought familiarity and quiet stability. Michael Keaton arrived like a spark in dry grass, improvisational, unpredictable, alive. His creativity thrived in chaos, in discovery, in moments no one planned. And then there was Shelley Long. Long wasn't difficult in the way people expect. She didn't explode. She didn't spiral. She didn't arrive late or unprepared. She arrived precise, calculated, armed with certainty. To her, every line had a reason, every movement a purpose, every beat a destination. She believed comedy was architecture, not jazz. And architecture does not tolerate improvisation. Almost immediately, the rhythm fractured. Scenes slowed as Long questioned choices, blocking, wording, tone. Not casually, intensely, methodically. She wanted answers before action, structure before spontaneity. And on a set trying to capture lightning, her need for control became a brake pedal pressed too hard. For a veteran director, this would have been a negotiation. For Ron Howard, still proving himself, it was an endurance test. He listened. He adjusted. He bent the schedule. He tried to bridge two creative languages, Long's precision and Keaton's chaos, hoping something magical would survive the collision. Outwardly, he stayed calm. Inwardly, the strain accumulated. The breaking moment didn't arrive with anger. It arrived with time. Hours lost. Momentum drained. A pivotal scene halted as Long insisted it needed rewriting, not refining, not adjusting, rewriting. For a young director under studio pressure, this wasn't creative debate. It was a challenge to authority disguised as professionalism. Howard didn't raise his voice. He didn't assert dominance. But something shifted. The collaboration ended, even if production continued. From that point on, he wasn't directing with her. He was directing around her. And that realization landed hard. Shelley Long would later defend herself, explaining that her questions came from preparation, not ego. And she may have been right. Not every conflict is about arrogance. Sometimes it's simply a clash of creative instincts. But intention doesn't erase impact. And the impact on Ron Howard was permanent. From Long, he learned a lesson as valuable as any learned through chaos. Control can be just as destructive as disorder. When certainty leaves no room for discovery, creativity suffocates. Film isn't built in absolutes. It's found in collaboration, in trust, in the freedom to fail forward. Night Shift succeeded. Ron Howard proved himself. But he walked away knowing exactly what kind of set he would never build. One where curiosity is questioned. One where structure dominates exploration. One where control becomes more important than connection. Tom Sizemore taught him that chaos demands boundaries. Shelley Long taught him that rigidity demands release. And with those lessons in hand, Howard believed he had finally seen every form of difficulty Hollywood could offer. He was wrong. Because waiting ahead was a force unlike any he'd encountered before, not chaotic, not rigid, but burning with an intensity so consuming it threatened to swallow everyone in its path. Russell Crowe, when intensity becomes a battlefield. By the time Ron Howard began A Beautiful Mind, he believed he had finally reached equilibrium. He had survived chaos. He had endured control. He had learned when to bend and when to stand firm. This project felt different. Cleaner. Purposeful. A meeting of minds. Howard was known for emotional clarity and restraint. Russell Crowe, fresh off Gladiator, was the embodiment of raw power and commitment. On paper, it was perfect. First, Crowe arrived prepared, focused, burning with purpose. He didn't show up to impress anyone. He showed up to fight for truth. Every line mattered. Every movement carried weight. Every choice was interrogated. Crew members watched him transform John Nash not as a role, but as a responsibility. Crowe wasn't acting, he was advocating. And that intensity was magnetic. But intensity has gravity. It pulls everything toward it. Crowe questioned constantly. Not out of defiance, but conviction. He debated rewrites, challenged camera placement, dissected emotional beats until nothing was taken for granted. Scenes didn't move forward, they were excavated. Truth, to him, wasn't discovered gently. It was unearthed through pressure, through confrontation, through endurance. For most directors, this would have been war. For Ron Howard, it became survival by balance. He admired Crowe deeply. He believed in the performance. But admiration doesn't erase exhaustion. Days stretched longer. Emotional fatigue settled over the set like humidity. The crew felt it. Howard felt it most. Crowe wasn't cruel. He wasn't reckless. He was relentless. And relentlessness, even when noble, can become overwhelming. Howard's sets were known for quiet rhythm, for trust, for space. Crowe disrupted that rhythm without meaning to. His fire demanded attention. And attention is finite. There were moments when the weight became almost unbearable, when Howard had to guide Crowe without breaking him, while also protecting the production from collapsing under the strain of one man's intensity. It was leadership under pressure in its purest form. And somehow it worked. A Beautiful Mind became a triumph. Awards followed. History remembered the masterpiece. From the outside, it looked like harmony. Inside, those who were there knew better. The cost had been real. The battles philosophical. Emotional. Draining. When asked years later if he would work with Crowe again, Howard chose his words carefully. Some collaborations, he said, are meant to happen once. Lightning doesn't need to strike twice. It wasn't bitterness. It was wisdom. Russell Crowe taught Ron Howard a lesson no one else could. Intensity is not the same as insight. Passion must be guided or it consumes. Even brilliance needs boundaries, not to limit it, but to protect everyone around it. Howard walked away changed again. Stronger, clearer, less willing to mistake fire for truth. And yet, even after surviving Crowe's storm, nothing prepared him for what came next. Because the next challenge wasn't intensity, it was legend. A legend so untouchable that no one had ever told him no. Marlon Brando, when genius becomes untouchable. By the time Ron Howard agreed to direct Marlon Brando, he believed he had earned the right to stand among legends. He had navigated storms, rigidity, and relentless intensity. He had protected his values without losing his footing. Working with Brando didn't feel like a risk, it felt like a milestone. A moment that would seal his place in Hollywood's highest tier. Marlon Brando wasn't just an actor. He was myth. His work had reshaped cinema itself. Generations studied him, imitated him, feared him. To collaborate with Brando was to touch the source of modern acting. Ron Howard approached the project with reverence and optimism, believing discipline and respect would be enough. They weren't. The Brando who arrived on set was not the craftsman of memory. He was untethered, disinterested in preparation, resistant to structure. He refused to learn his lines, insisting they be written on cards taped to walls, furniture, even other actors' bodies. He wandered off between takes, disappearing for hours without explanation. Scenes stalled. Schedules collapsed. The production bent, then cracked. Howard tried everything. Adaptation, patience, accommodation. He reshaped the shoot around Brando's behavior, hoping genius would emerge if given space. But space didn't bring brilliance, it revealed disregard. Brando didn't challenge the process. He dismissed it. Every delay sent a message, the work of everyone else didn't matter. The crew felt invisible. Trust evaporated. For Ron Howard, who had built his entire philosophy on respect and safety, the experience became suffocating. This wasn't creative tension. It was erosion. The breaking point came quietly, as it always did. A simple scene, meant to take minutes. Instead, Brando halted production repeatedly, demanded new motivations, then vanished for hours. When he returned, he announced he had reimagined the character entirely and wanted to start over. That was the moment Howard realized something irreversible had been lost. Not control. Not authority. Eventually, the project collapsed under the weight of Brando's unpredictability. Howard never blamed him publicly. Never told the stories people wanted to hear. That silence was not mercy, it was clarity. Some truths don't need amplification. Years later, Howard reflected on working with legends. Some, he said, earn their reputation through their work. Others earn it through their behavior. The difference matters. Brando taught him the hardest lesson of all. Talent without respect is destructive. Genius, when left unchecked, consumes everything around it. And no performance, no matter how iconic, is worth dismantling the humanity of the people creating it. Howard walked away from Brando changed in a way no previous experience had shaped him. Less forgiving of myth. More committed to values. Certain now that greatness means nothing if it leaves ruin behind. And yet, the most personal test was still waiting. One that didn't come from ego or chaos, but from friendship. From shared history. From a man who once stood beside him under the same spotlight. Henry Winkler, when friendship meets the quiet loss of identity. Not every wound is loud. Some arrive smiling, disguised as success, applause, and shared laughter. After the chaos of legends and the exhaustion of unchecked genius, Ron Howard's most personal reckoning didn't come from a tyrant or a storm. It came from a friend. Happy Days wasn't just a television show. It was a time capsule of American optimism. Families gathered around the screen. Laughter felt safe. And at the center stood Richie Cunningham, clean-cut, principled, dependable. Ron Howard had grown up playing America's moral compass. This was his world, his place, his identity. Then, almost without warning, the spotlight shifted. Henry Winkler's Fonzie wasn't meant to dominate the show. A side character. A cool accent to Richie's wholesomeness. But something electric happened. The audience responded. The leather jacket became a symbol. The swagger became a phenomenon. Scripts adjusted. Posters changed. The center of gravity moved, and no one needed to say it out loud. Ron Howard felt it. There was no betrayal. No arguments. No raised voices. Winkler was kind. Professional. Grateful. Their friendship was real. That was what made it harder. Because when the applause grows louder for someone standing beside you, the silence around you feels heavier. Richie's stories grew smaller. Fonzie's grew larger. The show didn't push Ron aside, it evolved past him. And for a young actor who had always been the lead, the realization landed quietly but deeply. The role that defined him no longer needed him. Howard never blamed Winkler. He understood the truth most never do. Fame doesn't follow fairness. It follows heat. And Fonzie burned hot. Still, understanding didn't erase the ache. The loss wasn't professional. It was personal. Identity slipping through fingers without permission. That quiet displacement changed everything. Ron Howard began looking beyond the camera. Not out of jealousy, but clarity. If the spotlight could move without warning, then maybe it wasn't where he belonged anymore. Maybe leadership didn't mean standing in front. Maybe it meant creating space for others. Leaving Happy Days wasn't an escape. It was a decision born from honesty. Howard chose direction over performance, authorship over applause. And in doing so, he preserved the friendship that might have otherwise fractured under unspoken resentment. Years later, both men spoke with grace. Winkler acknowledged the imbalance. Howard acknowledged the pain. No villains. No bitterness. Just growth. Henry Winkler taught Ron Howard something no difficult actor ever could. Even in kindness, loss can exist. Even without conflict, change can hurt. And leadership means ensuring no one feels invisible, because he once did. This final lesson completed the circle. From Andy Griffith's silence to Sizemore's chaos, from Long's control to Crowe's intensity, from Brando's untouchable genius to Winkler's unintended eclipse, each experience carved the same truth deeper. Greatness is not built by dominance. It's built by decency, by awareness, by choosing empathy when ego would be easier. And that is why Ron Howard didn't just survive Hollywood. He redefined what it means to lead within it. In the end, Ron Howard didn't become great by avoiding difficult people. He became great by surviving them without becoming one of them. Through silence, chaos, control, intensity, ego, and quiet loss, he chose decency in an industry that often rewards the opposite. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. His story reminds us that true leadership isn't loud, and greatness isn't measured by dominance. It's measured by what you protect when no one is watching. If this story moved you, if you've ever worked beside someone difficult, or learned a hard lesson that changed who you are, share your thoughts below. Subscribe for more stories Hollywood never tells.